Hey friends, this is Jeff. Got a lot of great things coming your way. First, our new book is up and available in print or on Kindle, only at Amazon.com. Friends, we debuted and have held as the #1 new personality typing book on the site. We have held that position for 3 weeks. Thank you to those of you who grabbed a book, and we're very thankful for all of your feedback. Second, we're stepping things up in July and August at aroundthecircle.org. We will be filming and posting the remainder of our first Enneagram College course. We will begin doing monthly Zoom workshops with amazing guests, and we're going to continue our mistyping interview series there. Membership for all of this, as well as getting our full 10-hour audiobook. And there's over 25 extra hours of content from interviews that's there. This is only $20 a month for members. However, if you sign up for an annual membership, we're going to send you a book autographed and inscribed by both TJ and I as a huge thank you. Plus, you or someone you love can choose a live mistyping interview like the ones that we've been posting, or a 1-hour coaching Q&A session focused on you, your type, and relationships. So if you're interested in all of that, go to aroundthecircle.org. Incredibly grateful for all of you. As always, may all good things be yours. Hey friends, the audio is a little rough here for this episode, but stick with it. It gets much better 5 or 10 minutes in. Sorry about that, but this is an excellent discussion with the Adam Young. I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly, I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a longtime professor of philosophy in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, coffee guru, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
Boss,
Hey.
we're just starting off our summer post-book release with guests.
I was going to say, starting off our summer, that was months ago.
Now I'm getting to enjoy my summer.
Yeah,
I was
right.
in my basement trying to produce a book.
Post-massive release.
Oh, the sun is out.
Yeah.
And no more snow on the ground. We're here with Adam Young, and we're talking about his new book, Making Sense of Your Story. Adam is a trained trauma therapist and holds a master's degree in social work from Virginia Commonwealth University and an MA in divinity from Emory University. Adam, my dad actually is an Emory graduate, the Harvard of the South. Adam's a fellow at the Allender Center in Seattle, Washington, and host of the Places We Find Ourselves podcast. He is also the father of 2, lives right up the road from us in Fort Collins, Colorado, and we're thrilled to have him.
It's good to be with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
So I said this briefly off mic, but because it's an Enneagram podcast, we can get into that for a second and then pivot, because your book's not necessarily about the Enneagram, but there's going to be a ton of overlap with some of the things in Enneagram that TJ and I are very interested in, and the work that you're doing, specifically how we engage the past. But can you talk about your experience of Enneagram, and as an informed neuroscientist, do you see any overlap? Is there anything that gets you jazzed?
The Enneagram is fascinating to me because it helps me understand me. That was my introduction to it. I'm an 8. When I read about how an Enneagram 8 experiences the world, it was just super helpful in understanding, oh, this is why I feel the way I do inside. And then when you start to understand the 9 types and you start to understand your relationships with other people that are these types, it's just very illuminating and helpful in oh, this is how, look, not everyone sees the world the way I see the world.
That's incredibly helpful to hear that you're an 8. I read your book as though you were a 4. And I kept thinking to myself, why is this person pushing me like this? And I just didn't put it together. Go ahead.
Yeah, I couldn't get there from just the parts that I read. I would not have guessed that you were an 8, which means you've done a ton of work, and good job.
Thank you.
Especially one of the big things that we're going to end up talking about is how each of us engage our story. And story, in my mind, is a past-oriented way of coming to the world. Am I wrong in thinking that, Adam, that when thinking about story, much of it at least begins in a past reference, even if you were to play out and now your story takes place now and into your future?
Yeah, the past matters, but the reason it matters neurobiologically is because you have neurons, and the way you experience the world today in the present is a function of the filtering of your neurons. And that means your past is present. And so, is there this thing called the past that's distinct from the present? Absolutely. And that distinction is far less black and white than most of us want to believe.
It's an excellent answer. I love that you bring in the biochemistry that's taking place. I assume this is beyond your consciousness. You were talking about the physicality of your brain and how it has been fashioned over time. That is different than, I mean, I never go around thinking, you know what, the electrochemical pathways in my skull have channeled in a certain fashion such that this is now who I am. This is not how I come to my story. When you think about those, especially as an 8, those things are not in your control.
Mm-mm.
How do you think about that in terms of your self-understanding?
Well, every one of us has to come to terms with the fact that there is a tremendous amount of mystery to life. And that mystery begins when we are in utero, because our amygdala, which is the fear center of our brain, is fully formed at 8 months gestation. So even before you are out into the physical world, you are being influenced by another, and that's utterly out of your control. And then, of course, as infants, as toddlers, we are so utterly dependent upon our primary caretakers, not just for love, care, support, belonging, but therefore for the configuration of our neurons and our neural networks, which as a 55-year-old, we will then experience the world through those filters. So it's very hard to come to terms with the level of powerlessness that we all actually have as human beings. That's the nature of being human and having neurons.
Don't like powerlessness myself. What do you think they're teaching?
Well, and it's like this is something that I feel like I have had to keep relearning, control, understand, anticipate, like the complexity of all of it.
Well, what I'm hearing TJ put words to is just the mystery of what it means to be human and what it means for me to be Adam and to have Adam's experience, lived experience in this world, which is a very complicated place.
Yeah.
And a place where there is a lot of injustice, there's a lot of harm, there's a lot of heartache, there's a lot of tragedy. And when we experience those things, which I refer to as your story, that has a profound influence on your heart, mind, body.
That's well said. I love the topic of personal identity over time. And I'll bring that up as we're moving through the idea of story. And this is a primary element filter for your book. When you talk about story, just to elevate it to the forefront as a theme, what are you referring to then?
What I'm really talking about when I talk about your story are your stories, plural. In other words, the particular incident, scenes, vignettes that you remember, and you may not be, you may not know why. Why do I remember my 10th birthday party, for example? Why do I remember high school graduation? Okay, it was a big event. Yeah, but you don't remember the whole thing. You remember part of it. And so the portions of memory that you still have, what if you welcomed those as individual stories that deserve exploration and curiosity because they will help you understand who you are and how you've been shaped?
That was the quote that stood out most to me in the book was, you don't have a story, you have stories. And as a philosopher, I like the idea of you have these experiences that are taking place, and part of finding meaning in life is I assume, drawing a thread between these. And part of that is your creation as kind of the author of your story.
Yes. And I would say you make thousands of decisions that are the connecting points of that thread in response to the experiences you've had in life. Like our suffering, for example, can lead us to harden or it can lead us to soften. But that's a decision. And this is, in my mind, the ultimate mystery. Why one person chooses to grow and another chooses to shrink, I have no answer to that question. All I know is that each one of us has those choices every single day.
That's very well said. The thing that goes through my mind is a conversation I'm having with some buddies, and we're talking about our role in our story, seeing oneself. When you conceive of your own story, do you conceive of yourself as the hero in the story? Do you conceive of yourself as the victim? Or what occurred to me reading your book was, do you conceive of yourself as the author? And those are fundamentally different ways of seeing oneself. I was hoping for your thoughts.
Well, I think a blend of hero and author. I mean, one of the things that people have very difficult time coming to terms with is their glory. So when you say the word hero, I hear the word glory pulsing. And by glory, I mean the weighty substantiveness of every single person, particularly I'm thinking people that have experienced trauma, the way they respond to their trauma, not always, but is often so incredibly glorious, and it builds character and it develops in them a capacity for sorrow and joy. So the glory of the hero that is journeying through your life is you. And what are you going to do in terms of naming the particularity of how you bear glory in a unique way that is different than any other face on the earth? And I think that's a fascinating thing for people to endeavor to understand about themselves.
I likewise share that intuition. I am knee-jerk repulsed by most philosophies that begin with something like flawedness or depravity, of seeing oneself as lesser than and lacking potential. This is a value judgment that from which most of my thoughts about myself and others start, but I'm just generally repulsed by that because I have the strong intuition that you're incredible and you need to embrace that, and from that position to start living. And everything else that, like, I just feel like, again, so I'm an Enneagram 1, it seems like those who market you are defective are those who are just trying to control you. And I generally am deeply suspicious of that person. So on the healthy side, why not embrace your glory, your magnificence, and what you're made to be? That seems a better way to go. However, as you were saying, you will have some obstacles. Neurons, past events, family history. I assume that these can make you being a healthy, thriving human being make these problematic, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, none of us make it to adulthood without being harmed. Even if you came from a quote unquote good family, whatever that means, you experienced harm. How do I know that? Because your parents are not perfect. Your primary caregivers are human beings, were human beings, who at times did the best they could, and at other times did not do the best they could. So as a father, I know that sometimes I come through great for my children, and other times I harm them. What's very hard for people is to put language to the particular stories in which they experienced harm, particularly in their families of origin, from siblings and from parents. It is very difficult to write out and candidly speak about the ways their heart was wounded by the two people who were put here to take care of them. And that's what I'm inviting people to do in the book, Make Sense of Your Story.
Yeah, and especially in the vein of saying things that affected you. If I say this thing affected me and it was my dad who did it, if he hears me say that, he might hear, "You hurt me." Mm-hmm. And while that's true, like the the sense of not creating a rift because of something that he may not have been trying to hurt me at that time. And so for me, in my story, there's so much of my story that's like, well, my parents were doing the best they could. Yeah, they weren't perfect and they were going through their own stuff, but I don't want to make them feel bad for being screwed up 30 years ago. But also, that means I'm minimizing my story.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're doing it, if I'm hearing you right, TJ, in an attempt to protect your mother or father from engaging some of the ways they failed you.
Right.
And that intuition or instinct to protect our parents can be very strong, but it's not honoring.
Right.
And that's very important to come to terms with.
Right.
If the call is to honor your father and mother, and that's costing you layers of honesty, then it's not honor.
Right.
Whenever I come to literature of the sort that is bringing up parents, I seldom relate to it, mostly because I didn't really have an experience of parents. And so my dad left us. My mom had worked 2 or 3 jobs and was herself a 9 and very disengaged. So when the question is asked, how did your parents relate to your emotions? I have I have no clue how they are related to my emotions. I couldn't tell you 5 stories about that. When coming to those in a situation like that, I don't know how to engage the topic itself. You know what I mean?
But I do. I'm hearing you say that, and there's something incredibly tragic because as a boy, whether you were 6, 8, 14, we all need caretakers who can engage us emotionally. Otherwise, we know something of the experience of orphanhood, even if we have a biological parent in the home. The felt experience is that of orphanhood.
Talking then about story, when I come to a story in that sense, I generally want to reject those elements, control freak that I am. I don't know that they have any value for me. I feel like I've done a lot of work just kind of rethinking through them, and I don't know what else to do with it. You know, this person's dead. I don't get to talk to her about it. I've brought it up to my father. He's done with it what he wants, and now I'm just kind of in this spot where it's like, you know what? I'm a self-actualized man. I'm an action-oriented man. I don't really find a lot of purpose in these spaces anymore. And actually, I want to start living and doing something for my family, my kids, my future. Is there any reason why I need to sit in the past anymore?
Well, it's interesting the verb you used. The verb you used was sit.
Okay.
And that's very close to the word dwell. Right? And you hear this often, don't dwell on the past. And I'm not inviting anyone to engage and explore their past story as an end in itself. I'm inviting them to engage and explore their past story so that they can understand their present more accurately and fully. And so my contention, and it's not just mine, I mean, neuroscience over the past 30 years has made so much progress in understanding how neural networks come to be, which filter all of our present experiences. And we know that neural networks are developed very young. Not that they don't continue to develop over time, but the first 2, 3, 4 years of your life are incredible. They are disproportionately influential on the development of the brain that you currently have as a 40-year-old man. Therefore, it might behoove you to know something about the early years of your life so that you can understand why, as an Enneagram 1, great, but there are lots of Enneagram 1s. They don't all experience the world the same way, and that's because they had different stories growing up. So there are lots of commonalities among 1s, and there are a lot of differences. And those differences will be understood when you understand how your story differs from your friend's story.
And let me follow up on that real quick. I'll throw it to you, Teach. So say it's the case that I can then put my thumb on my neurological inner workings. What do I do with that information?
Yes. Well, I think the first invitation, it's not a cognitive endeavor. I'm inviting you to a far more embodied and emotional endeavor. In other words, all of us make it to adulthood with unfelt feelings. Feelings that I had as an 8-year-old boy that I could not metabolize. I couldn't have them. Why? Because in my home, it wasn't allowed to feel anger, for example, or to feel fear, or to feel sorrow. There was no space for me to feel those feelings. Therefore, that stuff gets, and the common word is triggered. It gets activated. All that means is neurons fire as a 44-year-old man when I have a particular interaction with someone, and it's memory. It's bringing me back to invite me to feel and engage those unfelt feelings from my growing up years. So the invitation is not so much cognitive as it is emotional. And when I say embodied, I mean listening to the sensations below your chin, from your neck down. And many of us ignore. There's a great quote in a James Joyce novel where it says, Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body. And that's a brilliant way of getting at this idea that lots of us live disconnected from our bodily sensations. And we do that to our detriment.
You see this kind of thing in trauma work often, like someone who, to not get into intense trauma, but like someone who was bitten by a dog as a child and like has a visceral response in their body when they encounter other dogs in a similar way, and maybe they don't remember the dog bite, so they don't associate that. They're just afraid of dogs. And so then similarly, like as an adult who gets triggered to that sense that I had when that thing happened when I was 8, and I couldn't figure out how to process that emotion. Now having that emotion come up, it may be the case that I have no idea where that's coming from.
Yes.
And part of the engaging the story is to recognize, like to trace it back and say, oh, this emotion is actually tied to that event.
Yes.
And then I can start to do the work of processing that event, feeling those emotions, and sort of integrating that experience in a way that helps me not be necessarily triggered by it, but to have it be a full felt emotion.
Exactly. Yes.
That's what I'm hearing. As somebody who is just not a specialist at all in this area, what I'm hearing is you don't want to be controlled by your past, so you need to name your past and feel the feelings that are underneath the surface so that they do not have undue influence on you right now. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, in part. I mean, undue influence, the only reason I'm balking at that is the way forward for so many of us is to welcome and befriend the very feelings that many of us want to somehow overcome, discard, conquer. You know, like, for example, you're anxious or you're afraid. And the idea is, I shouldn't be afraid. How can I overcome this fear? That's the language. Or in the 90s, there were the no fear hats, right? The idea was get rid of your fear. That's not human, and it's not the way to heal. The way to heal is to explore with curiosity the sensation of fear in your body, so that, in TJ's example, you can make the linkages between, all right, I'm afraid of dogs, and you know what? There's actually a really good reason for that. I had a horrible experience with a dog when I was 5 that I don't have explicit memory of. But the felt sensation of fear, that's actually a form of memory. It's just a different layer, and it's called implicit memory. And implicit memory runs our lives, not explicit. Implicit memory does not have the sensation of recall associated with it. So when I ask you, hey, do you remember your second grade teacher? You have that sensation of floating back in time and remembering. That's called the sensation of recall. With implicit memory, there's no sensation of recall. In other words, it feels present. And that's what we call a trigger.
So this is, you've had experiences and they reside in your subconscious and have an influence on you? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you have memory. It's just implicit, not explicit. And therefore, and relational memory is largely implicit. Implicit is about the feel of things. So for example, if you grew up in a home where there was a high level of violence and uncertainty, and there was explosive rage at random times, you are going to have a bodily sense of hypervigilance. You're always going to be scanning the horizon looking for danger. Why? Because you have a lot of implicit memory networks that are scared and that are looking around the bend for danger coming.
Like muscle memory.
Like muscle memory. Yep, riding a bike.
The suggestion would then be not only naming your implicit memories, but in your words, not only having curiosity about them, but welcoming them, befriending them.
Yes.
And that's tied to the emotion of the event.
Absolutely. What do I mean by befriending? Well, it's if you had a dinner guest over, you would set a table for them, set a place at the table for them. You would serve them a nice meal, and then you would ask them about their life. That's called hospitality. I want you to have hospitality for the parts of you that are younger, that are reactive, that are scared, that are ashamed, that are angry, that are impulsive. Set a place at the dinner table for those parts of you, and then ask those parts some questions. Like, tell me what it's like to be you. I want to know you, and I want to understand you.
We spend a lot of time talking about shame, fear, and anger. Is it the case that with those three emotions, these are worth, in your mind, then, your primary posture toward them is one of curiosity and befriendment?
Yes, that's what I want to, and that's what I want for my own life. I want to have some curiosity about the places of shame that I hold in my body and the stories that are associated with that shame. Because shame, fear, anger, whatever the emotion is, it's always storied. It's never random. The things that make me afraid will be different than what makes TJ afraid. And there's a reason for that, which is autobiographical.
That's well said. Thoughts?
I was thinking about I'm trying to figure out how to describe a specific person, but I don't want to describe that person. So say the young baby boomer grew up in a generation being raised by people who don't necessarily have the skills or capacity to be engaged with their emotions, and grows up in that environment, doesn't necessarily see the value of it. Successful person in their 60s, 70s, maybe like 50s, 60s, 70s, did not develop the skills to be engaged with their emotional and mental life in this way. But they're still like a fairly well-adjusted person. That person wants to know why they should be engaging with these stories.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
My answer to that is because life is in part emotional. That's just what it means to be created in the image of the triune God. You have a humongous inner world. Now, many people can shut that down, but they can never eradicate it. And you can always reconnect to it. Always, 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 because of this thing called neuroplasticity. You can always grow as a human being. The question is, what do you want with your one precious wild life? Do you want to be a human being who is just as apt to be weeping with someone in sorrow one moment as you are to be rejoicing in joy with someone else in the next moment? In other words, the way the psalmist puts it is, God has enlarged me in my distress. Do you want a large heart? I think to be human, and to be, the biblical word for it is sanctified, means to grow in your capacity to be fully alive. And a big part of that is your emotional life.
Love I love talking to eights who understand and embrace magnanimity and the big heartedness. This is a treasure of life. And so just to name it for the sake of the Enneagram podcast, but say it's the case. So I'm trying to get my head around the idea of if I think through elements of my story or other stories that have episodes of significant dysfunction of human beings that we encountered who did horrendous things to us. And I'm engaging those spaces and the emotions tied to those spaces. And the suggestion being, so for me, I very, when I think through those elements of my own past, the primary emotion I experience is anger.
Mm-hmm.
The anger itself is the friend. The object of my anger is not my friend. We'll talk about that relationship in terms of here's the emotion, here's the catalyst for the emotion, and how one might walk through thinking through episodes in one's life that produce that sort of emotion.
Right. Well, when you've experienced harm at the hands of someone else who should have protected you, the very godly response to that is somewhere between anger and rage. And the question is, are you going to bless your anger, or are you going to dismiss it, shame it, push it down, say good Christians don't do anger, whatever it is? Anger can be so healthy, holy, important when you have suffered injustice, harm, heartache. And so the question is, how are you going to feel your anger? How are you going to bring some containment to it? Who's going to witness it? Because we need our stories witnessed. To be angry by yourself with a baseball bat and a trash can is healthy, but it's not as optimal as having someone else witness my anger and be with me in it. Being with is so healing, especially around big emotions like anger, fear, shame.
So is it that I need others to understand my anger? So for myself, just to like full exposure, if I could find the people who harmed me, I would burn down their house. That would be like my first impulse.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is that you have a lot of anger and you're not sure what to do with it. And that is not uncommon.
Well, I feel like my response to it is I'm a better person than that. You know, and I'm better than them.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I transcend my anger by making that move, showcasing that I'm simply a superior individual to that man and to that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel really comfortable in that spot.
Okay. There's a lot of self-righteousness in that.
And I am comfortable with that as well.
Okay.
Is there a problem with that?
Well, here's the dilemma. The dilemma is you can't conquer, overcome, become superior to your rage. Emotions have to flow. If they don't, they leak out sideways. That's just the nature of emotion. And I do not understand the neurobiology of it. I just understand it conceptually. Emotions will manifest. If you suffered harm and injustice and you have anger about that and you have not processed that, by process, I mean felt it, particularly in community, and expressed it in some tangible bodily ways. If you don't go through that process, which is the way our bodies are designed to process emotion, then that anger is going to leak out sideways in some way. One big way that it does is through physical illness, disease, injury. Another way it does it is you get angry way disproportionately at people that don't deserve it, or at yourself. Lots of people are not externally angry at others, but they beat the living crap out of their own self internally. That's what I mean by leaking.
You got that, Steve?
I mean, he just described anger itself, anger turning into a physical disease, and anger being directed outward at others. 891, it's right there. I have a chronic pain disease, and I'm also a 9, so I've been tightly holding on to my anger for my entire life. So, yeah.
Would you be willing to say that this is a? I mean, I don't know if that's psychosomatic at that level. Would you be willing to say that that's the origin of the things you perceive as your pain disease?
I am open to that as a possibility, but who knows?
What I heard is that there's something like some of you who are into physics, there's something like the second law of thermodynamics at hand here, where you are like energy
Yes.
taken in. Okay, do it like that energy needs to go out, and what you're suggesting is, I'm a philosopher, I'm an ethicist. Healthy is a super valuable category for me, and it's all about value judgments, but a healthy way of unleashing or releasing energy ends up being in community, walking through events that need to be spoken of,
Yes.
that allow that energy that is contained in yourself to be released.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And we have precious few places of that level of what Francis Weller calls the village anymore, especially in modern white American cultures. Very few places for the village of elders to bear witness to and create ritual contexts for the healthy discharge of emotional pain. And that's causing a gigantic health crisis, among other things.
Is that the befriending of the emotion?
Yes.
Then is not confession, but in storytelling.
Yes, it's telling, like, I need you to hear my stories. And then I don't need you just to hear them. I need you to speak into them and tell me, for example, for TJ to tell me what it was like for him as I shared the story of what I went through as an 8-year-old boy. I want to know what goes on in his heart, mind, and body as he listens to the story of that 8-year-old boy. Why? Because that will help me know myself better.
We share it all together.
Bang.
I think that is also a really beautiful window into how the emotional response group works. The 4, 6s, and 8s in that. What is that grouping?
That's right. Responsive.
Yeah.
Emotionally responsive.
Coping style. Is that coping style? Shouldn't I?
Is there coping
Didn't
style?
we write a book on this or something?
We did.
But that idea of holding the emotional space together is like many hands that make light work, but it also is informative and expanding, and it serves to bring it's a uniting experience as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that uniting, that joining is incredibly healing for the neural networks in your brain that have been disintegrated, dissociated through harm.
Sure.
I suppose that would be the place to turn if you understand that your brain has been fashioned, neural networks have been built through your experiences. When you become self-aware that that process has taken place, you can pivot to saying that process is taking place and will continue to take place. And in some sense, you have some agency there.
Yes.
You don't have agency over all things, but you do have some agency in terms of what are you building?
Yes.
What are best practices when you think of fashioning your own cognitive life?
To get in as many relationships with securely attached people as you possibly can.
So, are you giving me permission to bail most of my friends on?
I'm not saying discard your friends. I'm simply, we know this to be true neurobiologically. Way more helpful than therapy, way more helpful than psychodynamic drugs is getting in relationship with securely attached, mature, differentiated people and just doing life with them. That changes your brain way more than therapy, drugs, anything else, psychedelics, anything.
They have an app for that, yeah.
No app. Yeah, no app.
Well, and this is something that could take us on another path that we could be on for days, but the demic level of, like, we're constantly talking about how how badly we are disconnected as a society, and the internet and social media and all of the stuff, and lonely young men and all of these things, and like this is another opportunity to say that, like, spending time with people who are healthy is not only good but necessary, and
Yes.
it makes more healthy people. And the more we spend time sucking in poison, the more unhealthy we're going to continue to get, and we can see that unraveling in the society around us.
Well said.
Since we talked about anger, like, it's easy to see anger as a sort of a motivator, a propellant. Like, anger can help to move things along. Fear keeps us alive. I get that. But we've been having a lot of discussion about shame as one of those, like, three core more emotions that we discussed in the Enneagram. And so it's easy to see the ways that we can and want to befriend anger and fear. Do the same thing with shame.
Shame is, in my opinion, the most difficult emotion to engage, because shame is inherently the felt experience that there is something defective or deficient about me, and therefore I'm undesirable to you relationally. You do not want to be in relationship with me if you know this thing about me. And so shame, by definition, does not want to be brought into the light. It does not want to be spoken about. And yet, the only thing that can extinguish shame, that can heal shame, is bringing those very dark places in our lives, in our hearts, things we've done, things we feel about ourselves, into the light of community, relationship. However, not everyone is safe enough to do that with. So you have to pick your guides well. You need, and comes back to the idea of the village and elders. We need people that are mature enough that they know how to use their power on behalf of the wounded, because the shamed are the wounded. And absent elders, or enough of them, there aren't very many places where we can bring our shameful stories and we will be engaged well in a way that brings healing to those shameful parts. However, when we find those people, then it is a reasonable risk and a necessary risk and a heroic risk to put language to those stories of shame so that they're brought out into the light and we are assured of some level of belonging, which is the fear that we have in the beginning. If you knew this about me, you would not want to be in relationship with me.
Distinction often made with shame being something to the extent of there's the view that I'm bad versus I've done something wrong.
Right.
When speaking about shame, are you speaking about either of those in particular? Or
Yeah.
both the same?
Shame is I'm bad. Guilt is I've done something wrong.
Right. So in terms of I'm bad, that seems to like, if you knew this about me and I'm bad, where do those overlap? I'm having a hard time seeing where those overlap if it's not about this is the behavior that I've engaged in.
Well, for many people, it can be a behavior that they've done that they feel shame about. But instead of them feeling this sense of I've done something wrong, with shame, you feel this sense of I'm just defective and deficient as a human being, and therefore you're not going to want to be in relationship with me. I won't belong. I'm not welcome. I'm excluded. It's the essence of the scapegoat mechanism. I am excluded and exiled because belonging goes to the core of our need as human beings. We need to belong to a tribe.
You want to wrap up on a quick word on fear?
Yeah, with regard to fear, fear needs to be soothed and soothed relationally. In other words, when we're afraid, we need comfort. We need to be held, whether that's physically or relationally and emotionally. We need the experience of being held and soothed. And very many people, when they're afraid, they keep that internal And that precludes the possibility of soothing, comfort, care. So when you're afraid, the invitation is to share that fear and get connection relationally and get soothing from others.
Which is why adding more security cameras doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be a uniting movement, not a protection movement. Yeah.
Last word on engaging your stories, Adam?
No, I've said plenty. Goodness gracious. I just want to invite everyone to do it. Your story matters, and it's worth it to do it.
He's Adam Young. His book, Making Sense of Your Story, is out and available. It's been a delight meeting you, sir. I hope we get a chance to talk in the future. If you're doing anything fun, make sure to invite us. And I'm cheering for all of your work, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Thank you.
He's TJ Wilson. He's officially awesome. I'm Jeff Cook. And who you aren't just is not interesting.